may have heard that. We record these meetings so that any of your neighbors that may not be able to attend the traffic calming meeting can have access to it. If you, they tell you they missed it or something, we post them on the website, on NDOT's traffic calming website. So someone would be able to find it there. But again, I'm Amy Birch. I'm a traffic engineer and consultant that works with NDOT to help facilitate the traffic calming program. And so we are here to talk about traffic calming project on Harpeth Bend Drive. And I'm gonna pop out a chat box here real quick. I'd forgotten to do that. But anyway, we have a chat box. So if you have questions, I'll be monitoring that. You can put those in there. Yes, council member. Did you want to say something?
No,
Okay.
I'm getting ready to hit the mute button.
Okay, great. Yeah, I was going to say, let's keep ourselves muted during the meeting, but it's a small enough group. If you have questions, you can unmute yourself and ask those, or if you want to put those in the chat box, that's fine too. So those are our getting started points, but we're going to talk about traffic calming on Harpeth Bend. And first, we're going to talk about the program itself, give you a little knowledge about how the street was selected, some data points about your street, and then we talk about our toolbox of traffic calming measures. And then I have a concept plan that we've laid out for Harpeth Bend Drive, and we'll go over that, see if, how people like what they see or have adjustments or questions about the plan. That's why we have these meetings, so that we can get some feedback from those that live on the street about the plan. And then we'll talk about the next steps and how the project moves forward. But let's get started. All right, so just some background on what traffic calming is, but these are physical solutions. You've probably experienced them elsewhere in Nashville by now, because we've installed several different types of projects in Nashville, but our goal is to reduce speeding on residential streets through this program. And the 3 E's of traffic calming. We talk about education, this being part of our education of the public on what traffic calming is and reasons to drive slower. Enforcement, that's the job that the police department does. We know they can't be monitoring all streets, all residential streets and all the other streets in Nashville 24/7. So that's how the engineering comes into this traffic calming program. And that's really what NDOT focuses on, is the engineering of the street and how do we modify the street to encourage slower speeds. I'm showing an infographic here, and it's showing the correlation between a vehicle speed and a pedestrian's chance of surviving a crash. And so the left side is showing at 25 miles per hour, a pedestrian has an 89% chance of survival. But as that speed goes up to 35 miles per hour, the survival rate goes down to 68%. And then at 45 miles per hour, the chance of survival for a pedestrian goes down to 35%. So we're trying to reduce instances where we have speeding and pedestrians on the street through this program and slowing drivers down. And so, we know that crashes are less severe at slower speeds, but another point about speeding and crashes is that we have a greater chance of avoiding a crash altogether at slower driver speeds because your cone of vision is wider, you have a longer time to react and adjust your speed to avoid the collision. So we're really targeting safety through this program. So I want to show you just kind of like a snapshot of where of the program and the demand of this program. It's very popular. for NDOT. And so as of like last year, we had over 480 neighborhood streets that had applied. That number has increased. And then in the fall selection, which was the selection that Harpeth Bend was selected, we had 25 neighborhood streets selected out of those 480. And this map is just kind of showing lines on the county map of where we've received applications or where they are in the program. And this is a live map on NDOT's website. You can click on those streets and see where they are in the program, whether it's in the completion phase or an application's been submitted but not selected, and so forth. Now, outside the traffic calming program, we always like to direct people to the hub. It's a really great tool that Metro government has, and it's a way to submit needs and services to Metro government, so that the service request gets to the right department. So if you have a clogged drain that's causing flooding in your yard, you can put that into the hub and it gets directed to the right people at, say, Metro Water Services to get that corrected. It's all sorts of things like street lights are out, sign's been knocked down, the traffic signal is not working. All those things are great to put into the hub to get a quick response. And it's call 311 or hub.Nashville.gov. All right, so back to traffic calming and our prioritization, because I told you we have a great demand for this program, a lot of interest in the program and applications. And so how do we determine which streets have the greatest need and are selected in our selection rounds? And that is through this prioritization, where we have five criteria that we look at, and this is a data-driven process. So we go out and collect data on the streets, and we rank those streets. So this prioritization looks at vehicle speeds. So we measure the speed on the street, and we compare that 85th percentile speed to our desired residential speed of 25 miles per hour. And then we also, and that's worth 45% of the score. Then volume is measured, and that's worth 25% of the score. We also look at trip destinations. Are there places nearby where pedestrians from the street would be likely to walk or bike to? That's worth 5% of the score. So those are things like walking to schools, libraries, parks, and so forth. And we also look at whether there are non-driver accommodations on the street, like a lack of sidewalks. Streets that have a lack of sidewalks get higher scores because there's not that facility, and whether there are bus routes or bus stops nearby. So the non-driver accommodations is worth 15% of the score. And then we also look at crash history on the street and whether there have been pedestrian crashes on the street. And that's worth 10% of the score. And so it's a 100-point scale. So those streets that score the highest are the ones that was selected. So unfortunately, for those that live on Harpeth Bend, your street scored high enough. It had some characteristics that showed that it needed some traffic calming, but fortunately this program exists, and so we have hopefully some solutions to help calm the traffic and the speeding. So I do want to show some of the data points that we collected on your street, and this segment is Harpeth Bend Drive between Highway 100 and McPherson Drive. So our speed data showed that the 85th percentile speed was measured at 43 miles per hour, where the speed limit is 25 miles per hour. So I do want to explain what the 85th percentile speed is, because this is a data point that we traffic engineers often look at, and gives us a sense of how the drivers are behaving on the street. but it essentially means that 85% of the daily traffic on the street is going that speed or below. So 85% of the traffic on Harpeth Bend Drive is going 43 miles per hour or below. And so 15% of the traffic we actually measured going above 43 miles per hour. So that's quite fast for a residential street. Then we also measured the volume, and it's almost 1,400 vehicles per day. That's combined of both directions of travel. And just looking at just the street characteristics, we have 10-foot lanes. We also have bike lanes on the street, and there's not any sidewalk on the street. Now, this is just a map showing the extent of our project. So it's between Highway 100 over on the right side of the page to McPherson Drive to the left, which is already sort of part of a traffic calming project with the traffic circles that were installed a few years back, I think, maybe 2019 or so, I think is when those were installed. And so this legend here is showing, it's from our online tracker map, showing the stages of the traffic calming program that streets are. So you see like nearby, I think this is Bellevue Road up here to the north. It has an application on file, but it hasn't been selected yet. So anyway, this is our project limits. Now we're going to talk about our toolkit. Speed cushions are the tool we use the most often. They were the most effective and easy to implement. And a lot of times we kind of think that when people apply for the traffic calming program, they are thinking of these speed cushions to be installed on their street. But we do have some other tools in our toolbox I'll go over as well. But you've probably experienced these. They are rubberized devices that are installed into the pavement. One of the benefits of them is that they allow different configurations that allow these gaps between the cushions so that emergency vehicles have less impact to their response time. So that is one of the primary reasons why NDOT likes to use these as a traffic calming tool. So they do have markings on them that should have some reflectivity, but may not be. That we heard from council member that some may be having a hard time seeing them, so we'll look into that. But we also pair them with warning signage that you'll see in the picture in the top left-hand side. So that is we'll pair those directly with the cushions usually, or just in advance of the cushions to make sure that drivers know that they are approaching the device. The picture on the bottom left is showing just a profile view along the street. This is a 10.5 foot long cushion, so that middle portion you can see is flat, and then it ramps up and down on each side. So at its highest, they're 3 inches high. And then because they're modular, we can configure them in a few different lengths. But we typically use 10.5 foot and 14 foot lengths in areas like your neighborhood. More urban neighborhoods, we might use the 7 foot long cushions that are a little more abrupt. And then the picture on the bottom right, I want to point out the flexible post there, those white posts. You've got some installed on Harpeth Bend Drive, so I know you're familiar with those, but we incorporate those as part of the layout of these cushions so that drivers aren't encouraged to drive around the cushions into the bike lane. So that is something we would incorporate with layout on Harpeth Bend Drive. And then just depending on the width of the street is how we configure them into the road, like whether it's a set of 2 or 3 or 4 and what the pavement marking is on them. When we install these speed cushions or any vertical devices, we will put them in a series so that drivers don't just go over one set and then they're free to drive much faster again. As we place them in spacing of around 500 feet, then drivers will have to essentially stay the same speed consistently along the length of the street without like picking up speed and slowing back down real fast. So that's kind of the sweet spot of spacing. And the last thing I'll say about these is that we are paying attention to in other parts, characteristics of the street, like whether there are driveways. We're not going to put them right at the back of a driveway. We want to make sure that people, as they're driving on the street and turning in and out of their driveways, that they're not having to go over them sideways. And then we can't put them on really steep grades or in sharp curves. So those things come into play when we're laying out a plan. Speed tables are very similar to speed cushions in the material and how they operate, but you'll see that there's not the gaps between the devices. It's one solid hump across the width of the street. We don't use these as often, but they operate similarly. So NDOT has done some before and after studies of these traffic vertical devices, speed cushions installed. And so I just want to show some before and after of the average speed. On the left is the before speeds were on average 31 miles per hour. And then after the install, that went down to 22 miles per hour. And then the graph on the right is the 85th percentile speed comparison. And so that went from 37 miles per hour on average to 25 miles per hour on average on streets where vertical devices were installed. So as you can see, we think these are very effective. We also use radar feedback signs for traffic calming projects. And these are just like you see in these pictures. They're signs. They're posted with the speed limit sign usually, and they will flash a driver's speed at them as they approach the sign, so they can let them know. The signs let a driver know if they're going over the speed limit. These have also been effective. And we'll often use these on streets that maybe did not want vertical devices installed, or where the conditions of the street don't allow for vertical devices like speed cushions to be installed. We also will use pavement markings sometimes when we have a wide street that doesn't have any markings to kind of narrow the drive width. As you see in this picture, just kind of making a little shoulder there with some white edge lines. It's helpful. It can also increase a little bit of comfort for pedestrians, that they feel like they have a little space on the road. But we have to have, the right street to incorporate something like that. Your street already has striping on it. Then bulb outs, these are used with paint and the flexible delineators to narrow crossing distances on streets and tighten the radiuses on at intersections to slow down turning movements at intersections. These are kind of more of an urban installation. And then chicanes is another tool that we use not very frequently. We have to have all the right instances for something like this to work, the right street width, but essentially it it adds some horizontal deflection to the street, like some curvature, to slow drivers through an otherwise straight street. So these pictures are essentially alternating on-street parking from side to side of the street through striping to get that effect. And traffic circles, you're probably really familiar with traffic circles, as there are some on Harpeth Bend. And so they're like mini mini roundabouts, essentially. I won't go into too much detail, but they are really used at really wide intersections where we have that kind of area to cover, and the circles and the islands in the middle of the intersection cause that horizontal deflection, so cars can slow down as they navigate through an intersection. All right, so I'm going to jump into our concept plan that we have put together. And as I said in the beginning, this is intended to be a starting place, a conversation about, what we could do on Harpeth Bend Drive, but we taken a look at it and we think that it's a good candidate for speed cushions to be installed. So that's how we've laid it out. It's 8 sets between the length of the segment that this project is for. So basically between Highway 100 and McPherson Drive, they're spaced at around 530 feet. And because of the striping on the street, I think we'd put 1 cushion in each lane, similar to this picture that's shown. But because we have a bike lane, I don't have a good picture of that to show, but we have the bike lane on Harpeth Bend. And so we would incorporate some flexible delineator post alongside the cushion on the white line to keep drivers from getting into the bike lane to try to circumvent the cushion. And these would be 14-foot long cushions. So those are a little bit more smooth, and the longer they are, they're a little bit smoother to drive over. And I think I will pause there and see if we have any
Amy?
questions.
Hi,
Yes.
Amy. My name is
Hello.
Bernard Onby. I live in the Whiteheath, which touches the backside of Harpeth Bend.
Mm-hmm.
What we see on Harpeth Bend, particularly looking at this picture here, at the start where at Highway 100, it's a very long straightaway. And
Mm-hmm.
so we see drag racing, we see motorcycles drag racing, we see cars drag racing. So the first several speed humps really need to be what you called speed tables,
Tables.
because it really, a motorcycle can still go through there, and we're seeing a lot of that. In fact, I've called Sherry several times, being my council member, and complained about the speed. We'll see 70, 80, 90 miles an hour go by our house. Um, so with the constant street racing and motorcycles, I do think the first 4 or 5 on starting on the right-hand side of your chart here,
Mm-hmm.
they need to be full tables, not just speed humps, but tables as you called them,
Mm-hmm.
just so we can avoid the drag racing. And anybody can see with a cushion that a motorcycle, that's not going to slow down a motorcycle.
Because they have the ability to shoot between them.
Exactly. So that's not going to cut down on a drag race motorcycle. Um, the other thing that I'm glad you chose this, and thank you for doing this, is a lot of people do walk on that from the other neighborhood to get over to the Warner Parks. So it is definitely needed. We see bikers out there. So that is correct. The other thing, the feedback on the signage, I would discourage that in this straightaway, because what you're going to end up with is people trying to see how fast they can go. I mean, we really do see literally 100 miles an hour some afternoons. So that the little signage with your speed isn't really necessary. But
Yeah,
I do think the
we
speed
didn't
humps,
yeah.
also in that first straightaway there on the right, the longest straightaway, if there's any way possible to change it to a closer spacing. I think you said you had it for 530.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you said the minimum is, or your numbers should be around 500. I would encourage you to put the closest as possible on that one section. Um, I guess really from
Okay.
that perspective, that where the word Harpeth Bend is on there, that's a vacant lot owned by the HOA. We will see people come by and fire off their gun. It's just it's a situation that's going to get ugly. And again, I'm glad you're doing this, but the urgency and the the amount of speed cushions and the type, I guess, the speed hump is really important.
All right. Well, this is good feedback for us. The desire to have tables instead of the cushions because of the high volume of motorcyclists and driving fast. And then, yeah, we're not incorporating any radar feedback signs on
But
this in
so
this
so
concept.
thank you. And
And then
so
if
I
you want to
guess my main
enhance
concern would
that,
be on your chart would be again, if we're at Highway 100 and Harpeth Bend, that's just a little short stretch, and having one there
Mhm,
should deter some of the shortcutters. But the
mhm,
very first one under the word drive, that C, the following C, and the C at the next curve, and quite frankly, more than likely, the next C, all need speed humps.
the tables.
I'm sorry, the tables, not the humps. Yeah.
Mhm. Yes. And then you said maybe closer spacing in that area.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Closer spacing.
Okay. Well, this is good. We can check in with NDOT about, the use of tables. Like I said, we, primarily use the cushions, but, I understand the concern and that'll go into our, um, process. Is there any other questions or feedback on the plan?
One here if we could. What would, I live on Harpeth Bend, up past the McPherson turnoff, so we don't see the kind of through traffic that they do. But I was surprised at the amount of traffic there is at the McPherson end. Can you give us that number again? It was 1,300 some a day?
Yes, I think it was 1390. So that's the total, like, so we'll measure it kind of in the middle of the street. Take like a tube on the road you might see and measure and it was, I think 1390. Let me see.
That's, I didn't know that. It's a new fact. Thank you.
Yeah, 1392. So that's both directions. So it's, half in each direction roughly.
Yeah, we don't get the drive-through traffic that they do, but we do get an occasional speeding car, but not nearly as many as McPherson. And thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Well, I'm gonna move on and we can come back and talk about this if we need to, but I want to be respectful of your time. And so I'm showing here our program flow chart, where we are in the program, how we get to a constructed project. And so we started with an application. There are 2 application windows per year. And so there were applications received for Harpeth Bend. And, went through our prioritization process and it was selected in the fall of 2024. And we had a little trouble getting the meeting scheduled, but now we've got it scheduled. And so we're having that meeting now. And so this is, like I said, we give the overview of the project and the program. And now what we will do is go and do a more detailed design plan. So on that plan, we'll have the exact measurements of where the cushions or the tables are located and with dimensions and so forth on there so that both the neighborhood that's going to be looking at the plan as well as the contractor, if it gets constructed, knows exactly where to install the cushions. So we would do that work. And then from there, we can go into the online balloting phase of the program, unless we need to have a second meeting. If there's any reason to have a second meeting, like we need to drastically change the plan from what we've already presented, we would certainly be open to having a second meeting, or if if we have like super low turnout or something, and need to have a second meeting, we can do that. But, a lot of our streets, you know, the concept is pretty in line with what the neighborhood, was wanting. And in order to move the process forward, a little faster, we can go in from that design to the online ballot phase. This is the phase where, NDOT gets that input from the, property owners on the street that the project is desired. And I have some slides specific about this, that process. And then from the ballot, then we move into the construction, which is if the ballot is approved by the neighborhood, essentially, then NDOT orders the materials and gets that work going, into the construction. And so that process is about 8 to 10 months, after the ballot closes. So, you know, we've still got, several more months, to get this to installation if it's approved. So, I'm going to talk about the balloting. What we do is we send, postcards out, similar to the postcards that were sent, to the property owners on the street. And that gives access to this online ballot through a QR code. There are unique IDs on each of the postcards that's associated with the addresses. That helps us, make sure that we're not getting duplicate votes, or votes from, people that don't, live on the street. And then, that balloting time period is open for 6 weeks. And respondents have the ability to vote yes or no for the project. And then if 66% of the respondents to the vote yes, then the project moves forward. And so you might be asking, well, who's eligible to vote? The policies for the program are that residential properties, churches and schools get 1 vote, and it's only the properties that are abutting the affected right-of-way are eligible to vote. So those are, like I said, it's one vote, per property owner, essentially. So if there's an owner that has multiple properties on the street, it's still 1 vote. And then we don't count vacant properties, and businesses are not eligible to vote. So I've shown these highlighted properties in this map to show that it's 58 eligible properties or, that can vote. So that is that. Are there any questions about the balloting, how that works, or the vote? One thing about the ballots are, you know, it's open for 6 weeks, so it's a finite window. The top of the card has the closing date on the card, so that you know when you can look up the votes. So a few days or a week after the vote closes, we'll have those tallied and posted to NDOT's website. We don't post the individual votes, of course, but just the results, you know, what percentage voted in favor and if it passed or if it failed. And then some other details about the project or accesses on here. So if there's someone that receives their card and they don't know, they're not able to vote online for any reason, there's a phone number to NDOT to get some assistance with that.
Hey, Amy, can I pop in here a minute with a question on that slide?
Yes, let me go back then. Yes.
I also received some questions as to the bottom bullet. If 66% of the respondents vote yes, the project moves forward. Why did y'all choose to do it that way as opposed to if 66% of the residents vote yes?
Yes. You know, this program a couple of years ago actually used petitions, and the onus was on the neighborhood to go out and knock on doors and get wet signatures on a petition form. And that proved to be very difficult to find to get the property owners, and you know, some people are just not involved and connected, you know, and participating in that sort of thing. And so that's why we put these out in the mail and give everyone the opportunity to vote. And so, yeah, we just found that was the best way to do it, as opposed to 66% of the property owners, because that is a pretty difficult challenge, especially on some long streets.
Okay, I'll let them know. Thanks.
May I go back?
We would
one
love to
slide
have
as well?
everyone vote, though, just to clarify that. We want 100% turnout, but as I think we know, it's just not. Yes, what's your question?
Yes, can you go back one slide, please?
Mm-hmm. This one?
No, ma'am, the
Forward.
map of who's eligible to vote.
There you go.
That one, I'm sorry. I guess the biggest question is the Devon Park is the HOA, and I understand by you're looking at it, vacant lots are ineligible. I totally get that. I think where the misconception may be in your plan, besides the speed humps versus tables, is you're not including even the second row of houses are also impacted by drag racing, speeding, and things like that. So I understand the concept of saying, hey, it's only the people that touch the road.
Mhm.
But in a situation like this where it's an HOA, the houses are rather close to the street. I mean, I think I would live about 30 feet from it. So obviously I'm going to get a ballot, but then my neighbor doesn't. And yet the same amount of volume, danger affects them as well as it does me.
Yeah, this is certainly a unique situation, but we do have to, have some policies that we think are applicable to all sorts of streets in Nashville, and so far this is how we've done it through the program. Are there any other questions?
No, I just like to say in relation to this particular project, and as I know several others where this has come up, as we start reviewing the traffic calming program, I think that's going to be an area where we've got to have some give and take in order to make sure that we maximize the connectivity of our residents to the things that are happening around where they live.
Yes, thank you for that. All right, then I'm gonna wrap up. I have my contact information here, Amy Birch, at birchtransportation.com. Also have NDOT's traffic calming, email address, NDOT.TrafficCalming.Nashville.gov. So if you have, other questions, feel free to reach out. And then I do want to, point out NDOT's traffic calming website, TrafficCalming.Nashville.gov, or this QR code, because there's lots of great information posted on this website. The plans that are done and being voted on, those are posted on the website. These meetings that are recorded are posted on that website. We have our traffic calming tracker map there, so you can kind of look at the status of any street in the program, and also the manual and information about our toolbox is all there as well. And results from ballots, we post those on the website about a week after. So I think we do need to see if we need to have a second meeting, or if we feel comfortable about where the concept is, and if we can incorporate the speed tables and maybe some closer together tables in that one section behind Devonshire, that we could move forward and move into the ballot, if that would be desired.
Yes, it's Devon Park, and I really
Yes.
would like the concept of, someone that's in the same HOA and one house over, not saying that it doesn't affect them is not a correct, assumption, because it does.
Sure.
Can I say something?
Yes.
This is Jeanette Goddard. I live in Devon Park too. I don't live close to the Harpeth Bend, but I've heard stories over the years. I think what Mr. Omey is trying to say is this is way past a traffic calming situation. It's like a dangerous sport that's happening out there that's affecting people that live close to there and maybe not quite so close to there. I mean, there are people flying, doing 80, 100 miles an hour down that stretch of Harpeth Bend. Maybe the other part is just traffic calming, but that section, I'm sure there've been police reports about it. I don't know. But I mean, it's been going on for a while and it's gotten extremely dangerous to themselves as well as the people that live around there.
And the police are aware of that. I've talked to the commander multiple times about it.
I figured,
Yes, yeah, I understand the issue, and I do think that the speed cushions or speed tables or both would certainly reduce that and potentially eliminate it.
great. Sounds great. Thanks. I appreciate your help.
Absolutely. Well then, council member, would you like for us to move forward with the design and then just send ballots out once that's ready? Or do you want us to have a second meeting?
I would really like for the folks over at Devon Park and the folks that live up and down the street to get one more crack at this. Once we have an updated plan,
Mhm.
and then move to the vote. I want maximum participation if we can get it, or as high as we can get it. Just because of my experience with my two other streets that had minimal participation, got the speed cushions, and now they're having a fit. So I just want to make sure that everybody has a chance to weigh in on that. And I can also put something out there in my newsletter and make sure. So if you want to give me that
Yes.
activity, I'll make sure to get that out.
Yeah. Well, then that's what we'll do. That sounds great. We will do our field work and put together the design plan over the next couple month or so, and then we will coordinate with you and get the meeting scheduled, and then I can certainly share all the information so that you can put it in your email blast and everything, and we'll be able to share that concept plan as well. Or
That'll be
the
great.
design plan, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right then. Well then, I hope I've answered all the questions, and then I appreciate everyone's feedback that we've received, and I'm gonna share the information about the desire to vote as well with NDOT, and so we'll have more information and a more vetted out design as well as the answers about whether it's a cushion or table or a combination of those two on the street. So we'll be able to share that at the next meeting. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amy.
Thank you.
You bet. Have a good evening.
You too.